Welcome to If the Public Only Knew, the show that pulls back the curtain on what it really takes to build and lead a business. Host Gary Cinderbrandt sits down with some of today's most dynamic CEOs, founders, and leaders to dig into their origin stories, hard-earned lessons, and the missteps that nearly derailed it all. These are unfiltered, no-hype conversations designed to inspire, challenge, and fuel your own journey. Now here's your host, Gary Cinderbrandt.
Welcome back to If the Public Only Knew. I'm your host, Gary Cinderbrandt. I was a little late getting started today because as I was reviewing our next guest's website, I got pretty hungry and wondered why I can't get hold of some of this stuff. Our guest today is Myles Powell, CEO of Myles Comfort Foods. And if you check out his website, which we'll talk about, you'll understand why you might get hungry when you look at it. Unfortunately, I live out in Colorado, and we don't have anything out here yet, but I'm hoping we can get here. Myles, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining.
Gary, it's a pleasure to be here today.
So Myles, you and I share some common background. I'd say a large part of that revolves around the frustration of being where we're from. You want to comment on that a little bit?
I think we have the benefit of knowing how to deal with heartbreak. Being a Philly sports fan, there was a long period where it was just full of disappointment and letdowns. And we've been fortunate enough to experience some pretty high highs recently, but we're Philly sports fans, so we know it's not going to last forever.
We don't quite believe it.
Yeah, so we're just trying to embrace the moment while we can.
Right. So when I saw Myles, your area code was 610, and I said, "You a Philly kid?" He go, "Yeah." I said, "Go Birds," and that was all we needed to say. So we'll try and keep that somewhat limited. Myles, as we talked about before we started, I'm fascinated by stories of people that thought coming out of high school into college, maybe even graduate school, that they had things pretty well figured out as to what their life would look like. But at some point along the way, maybe it was a sudden aha moment. Maybe it was just you didn't like what you were doing, searching for something else. The common theme I find is a light bulb goes off, and it's almost irresistible. Now, I'm assuming that was kind of what happened to you when you left your job with an engineering background and moved into this. So I'm guessing a little bit here, but take me through how you graduate with an engineering degree and you end up making some really tasty food.
Yeah, so for myself growing up, the dinner table was just, it was the place to be in the household. Food was always the centerpiece. So I always had this passion for cooking, just in general. And my parents would tell me growing up, entrepreneurship is the way to go, the way to build yourself up, etc. But I was also good at math and science. And at the time, you're talking mid to late 90s, early 2000s, engineering was the field to be in, right? This is before the tech boom. And so they said, hey, get an engineering job. You'll be set, be your own boss at some point, etc. So I did that. I went to school for civil engineering and spent 4 years getting my butt whooped. It was the first time that I was challenged to that degree, and I just didn't understand it. As I was going through the process, nothing clicked like my classmates. But when I graduated, there was a sense of accomplishment of like, okay, I've done it. Now I'm excited to be an adult, get a job, make some money, etc. But as I entered the workforce, which I was so excited to do, it felt empty. And it was you talk about the light bulb moment. It was a Tuesday morning. I'm sitting in those high cube walls that a traditional office space would have. The clock was about 9:30 in the morning, and I said, wait, I've got to do this for the next 40, 50 years nonstop. And my brain broke. And that was my moment of, well, what else am I going to do with my life?
Let's back up just a little bit, if you don't mind, because I'm interested in the fact that you knew you had good skills in math and science. You came from this warm environment where food, comfort food, the dinner table, the family was really important. So on the one side, you've got this really nice vibe in growing up, but you've also got a mind that works on a fairly technical basis. So I'm not surprised, but I want to try and square the circle around when you realized, as you started to dig into the math, the physics, the science, all the things you needed in a civil engineering job, was there some voice in the back of your head saying, yeah, I don't know if I want to be doing this?
Almost every day.
Okay.
I ignored the voice though, because I was doing this for the promise of a good career. And I was telling
But wait,
myself,
was it a promise you were trying to fulfill for yourself or on behalf of others?
oh, it was for myself, but it was
Okay.
mainly because the environment in which I was living was make money through engineering.
Okay.
And and I remember there were moments even in college where I actually picked up a business minor because I was finding things that I liked outside of it, but you're still exploring, right? And funny enough, I was taking career aptitude tests as soon as I graduated, being like, what am I going to do in life? I never liked the answers. But I had this degree. So I went, I'm going to do this.
None of them came up with launch a national fast food brand or national frozen
not
food
even,
brand.
not even
That's
close.
hysterical. So your brain breaks. It's 9:30 on a Tuesday morning, and you realize this is just not where I want to be.
Yep.
Take
But
me
I
out
had
from
bad
there.
bills,
Well, who doesn't? What
So
happens? What happened? Wait, were you married at
no,
that
no,
point?
this is super single, fresh out of college, Miles.
Oh, so risk is small
Brand
R at
new
this point. Yeah.
yeah, brand new adult, right? And
Okay.
so, I almost not even an adult, right? So I would go home and I naturally started cooking a lot. Like it was my way of expressing creativity.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it was for myself, right? But I had so much fun and enjoyment of cooking for myself. I would share it with folks in my office. They loved it, and then I started a food blog. This is prior to Instagram, right? So like food blog was the way to get your recipes out there, and that was gaining traction. Like the
Really?
recipes that I was creating, and I went, "Huh, this is something. I don't know what it is, but I like doing this a lot."
So you were
And that's what
cooking,
started.
as a means of not distraction, but almost as a means of self-comfort at that point?
Yeah, yep, exactly right. And it kept me connected to my family as
Wow.
well because I was
Okay.
making recipes that reminded me of home. Um, there wasn't a solid plan at that point. It was just cooking out of passion. And I was fortunate enough to not have a big social group out there when I was at the time. And so I would spend my weekends watching the Food Network and then cooking. Like that was my height of my weekend.
I completely understand. There are times I'll lay in bed and I'll scroll through video shorts of people making stuff. Some of it looks ridiculous. Some
Mhm.
of it looks phenomenal. But
Yeah.
I completely understand. My wife and I are both foodies. She's a phenomenal chef, and I think she finds a lot of comfort in the kitchen as well. I'm decent at cleaning up, is what I usually get assigned to. All right, so we're making those foods. Was it any one type of food, or were you experimenting? Were you expanding? Where at some point, as the food blog started to gain traction, when did you start to think about maybe I can turn this into a business?
The first idea was I wanted to create a cookbook and sell the cookbook.
Okay.
I had no idea what that meant, but I said, you know what, I want to develop this blog until it hits a certain momentum, and then I'm going to find who to talk to about a cookbook. But I always had these like grand ideas of a restaurant or some food truck or something that I could do to fully express my creative side in the kitchen. And just to backtrack a bit, my dad and my mom were both part-time entrepreneurs. They had full-time jobs, but they were doing entrepreneurship things as well. So I had that, and my grandpop as well. So I always had this entrepreneurship spirit, and I wanted to figure out what to do with it. And I knew food had to be involved. So while I was thinking about the cookbook, I was still brainstorming. Well, what if I do like make create wings at a restaurant? What if I? It was all these moments of ideas floating back and forth. And then there was a huge moment that came. I was scrolling late at night post Food Network binge. There was
Hmm.
a casting call for a cooking competition.
Okay.
And I looked at it and I said, well, I'm not a professionally trained chef, but a friend of mine said, well, why not? What's the worst that can happen? So I applied, and that was like the foot in the sand moment and the pivot towards, all right, now I'm going down this path.
Okay. What did you cook?
Oh man. The show was called America's Best Cook.
Okay.
And I was quote unquote forced to cook duck, and I had never cooked duck before. So it didn't end up too well, man. I was out off of that show episode 1. But, you know, after the show, I felt that I'd found the thing that I wanted to really, sink my teeth into.
Okay. No pun
So,
intended.
yeah, not at all. And mind you, I'm still working as an engineer, right? But I found this thing to grasp onto, to fuel my passion. So at that point, I had been experimenting with this barbecue sauce just for fun, and my
Mhm.
office mates loved it. I shipped it to friends; they loved it. But now I knew, okay, I'm going to start a business making barbecue sauce. I don't know
Okay.
how. I'm going to Google it. I'm going to figure it out, and here we go.
Okay. So you started with the, I think I saw it on the site. And the barbecue sauce was pretty unconventional from what I could see. You had fruits in it, you had all sorts of different things. How did you figure that part out? Just trial and error? Did you have some idea how to balance acidity with alkalinity and sweets and sours? How'd that come about?
Funny thing, there was no scientific approach to this. It was winging it 100%. I had made barbecue sauce in the past, like traditional style, and I love
Okay.
barbecue sauce, so I knew kind of everything you need to include in it. A friend of mine once said, I never forget this. She was traveling overseas and she was like, Miles, I had this great barbecue hot sauce it was hot sauce mixed with raspberries. It was really good.
Ah,
I tried to make it and it was gross, but I was determined. I'm like, you know what though? What if I still use a fruit, make a barbecue like what? And I just kept
mm.
experimenting with it. And pretty much right off the bat, it was amazing. And then I said, oh, this is really cool. I've
I
never
mean,
seen anything like
I'm
it.
looking at the raspberry and I'm looking at the other one, and it's again, I'm getting hungry. I mean, it's fascinating. All right, so you're making, and by the way, I love the tagline. It's 8 miles. Is that eight like ATE? A play on that,
Funny
or
enough, there wasn't even a plan around that. It was just
uh,
a play on words, I guess.
you could get a Detroit reference in there on 8 Mile, right?
Exactly, exactly.
And then embrace every mile. I think that's really really cool. Even the fonts look fun.
Yeah.
Um, so the barbecue sauce is produced. Then what happens?
So at this point, I am I'm selling it online,
How are
right?
you
Because
handling? Okay, so let's back up a little bit because you've never done this before.
oh yeah, yeah.
How are you handling prepping to scale? How are you cooking? How are you bottling or canning, preserving, and shipping? Take me through all that because these were not things you were trained for in school.
Nope. So the first thing was forming a business, right? I used LegalZoom. I actually filed my own trademark. So quick aside on that, at this age, I'm 24 years old. I'm still very much ingratiated in the okay, it's Friday, let's go out tonight and
Hmm.
have fun. Saturday, go out and have fun. The moment changed when I never forget this. It was a Friday at happy hour, and I'm out and about, and all my friends like, okay, after this, we're gonna go XYZ. And for some reason, I go, nah, you know what? I'm gonna go home because I'm really excited to figure out how to file this trademark. And I remember going home and I got all the paperwork on my desk, and it's like 11 o'clock on a Friday, and I
Yeah.
go, okay, this is my life now. Like, have I matured to this point now? So, did all the paperwork. And then to produce it, I know I couldn't make it in my apartment. So I
Okay.
found a culinary kitchen that was nearby that was actually renting out space at night when there were no students there. So I would
Interesting.
drive 40 minutes after work. I would bring all of my ingredients, all of my bottling equipment, and I would make all the sauce there, which
Wow.
I had to Google how to preserve and retain shelf life. This is all just me
But
figuring it
that's
out.
really, I mean, that's really some creative thinking right there.
Yeah, and it was the only option I had, right? I didn't know
Sure.
anything about anything else. So, and I had asked manufacturers about, well, can you make it for me? And they of course go, okay, well, our minimum order run is 10,000 bottles. And I'm like,
Yeah, that.
I just need 12, no. So I would spend 3 days a week in the kitchen just making barbecue sauce after work. I would store it in my apartment, and then I hired a branding agency, local guy, to just create a logo for me. We went through a whole branding deal, and now I had the guts to a brand, right? It was an unknown, thing that this one random engineer was just making barbecue sauce at his spare time.
Okay. And so your initial sales, did you have to get financing? Did you bootstrap? How did that work when you started to scale?
100% bootstrapping. I didn't know a thing about financing at this space. I didn't, I'd never heard of an angel investor. So
Okay.
it was me using some of my savings and launched this brand. And it wasn't extremely expensive, right? I mean, I wasn't paying myself. I had no staff. It was a hobby, right?
Yeah.
That I was using to sell some barbecue sauce.
Phenomenal. And how did you go from barbecue sauce to the other products and now being in hundreds of locations? Now you've got to have a distribution network. Now, from some point where you're selling barbecue sauce to your buddies, some other things happened, and all of a sudden you started to get traction. At what point did you realize you could make your life out of this? This is what you were meant to do. How did that happen?
There was a very big false start moment that I talk about often during this process. I had moved to DC because I wanted to be in a bigger market. I figured to grow the brand. And also personally, I was tired of living in rural Pennsylvania at the time. And I wanted to be a young 25-year-old guy in DC, right? I will firmly admit I was excited
I
to
got
be in a big
it.
city. So when I got to DC, I had an engineering job still, but I hated it. And I remember telling myself a month into that job of like, I've got to quit and just give this thing a full time shot. I this is probably year two and a half. So I've been doing it for a little, but I pretty much plateaued. I didn't know how else to grow it part time. So I quit my first my engineering gig and went broke ASAP. I mean,
Yeah.
DC was expensive. I had no real game plan to how to build this company. It was me falling in love with the allure of full-time entrepreneurship, but not understanding the full responsibility of it. And it taught me a harsh lesson pretty quickly. And while I made some gains, like I found some small retailers to pick me up, sort of like by blind luck. I was making more product, but it was still a hobby, and I ended up having to take the full time space and now go back into engineering, or else I was going to be homeless, right? So it was that transition back into full time work that kind of helped me refocus a bit and look
Okay.
at my product line, my brand, and I knew a little bit about retail at that point to say, okay, what's not working, what's working. And the one thing not working was the product type. Barbecue sauce is very competitive, it's very regional, it's expensive to ship, it's glass. Mine was glass. And I was looking for something different. I would do farmers markets, and at these farmers markets, no one's buying barbecue sauce at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I hated it,
Right.
right? But they would always buy food that you could eat on site or take home
Yep.
and reheat. So
Hmm.
I started bringing my foods that I could pair with my barbecue sauce just to boost
Interesting.
the sales, and people loved it. And that's when I went, ah, there's something here.
Fascinating. So it was the food you were cooking
Yep.
that kind of stole the show. And their attitude was, well, this sauce goes really well with this food. How do we get more of this food?
Exactly right.
Interesting. Do you remember the foods you were cooking at the farmers
Oh
markets?
yeah. Oh yeah. It was simple. It was mac and cheese that I would put my
Yeah.
buffalo sauce on, and then it was chicken wings.
Nice.
And I love chicken wings. So I would make all these chicken wings and bring them to the market. And that was it sold like hotcakes, right? And
It's
that's
kind
when
of
I
hard
knew.
to walk past a free chicken wing sample.
That's what I'm saying,
I
right?
don't know who anybody that can do that, or even a little thing of mac and cheese. I mean,
Uh-huh. Exactly.
those are the two things people are. I mean, I know people that go to Costco and they get there at the right time just to hit the food samples like that.
Hey, listen, it's not a bad choice.
That's fascinating. So now you've got the mac and cheese. So you're getting your education through a little bit of trial and error, a little bit of field research. Farmers markets are starting to work for you. When did you productize the mac and cheese?
Around the time that the markets were telling me, "Hey, we like this product a lot," I went. If you'll notice, there's a theme here of I don't. I step in fast. I don't really hesitate, and so I knew I had this mac and cheese product. I didn't know a thing of how to sell it in retail,
Sure.
so I just bought like a bunch of those tins with the little see-through lids on top. I went to my kitchen space. I made the mac and cheese. I put a lid on it, and I went to my retailers and just said, "Hey." do you want to sell this thing now? And I mean, and I look back at that packaging. I mean, it was so rudimentary. Like
Yeah.
I'm surprised that people even like was like, okay, I'll put this on my shelves, right?
Did it stay
But
fresh or was it frozen?
it was frozen because I'm like, I
Okay.
didn't know a thing about. I didn't trust fresh. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't want to add things to it to make it last long. Let's just freeze it, and then when you heat it up, it'll taste like it should. And man, when I put it on the shelf, people would eat it, and it's outsold my sauces like 10-1.
That's amazing.
We're talking like two retail partners, right? So I'm still a nobody in this space, but I've got a couple of people that I work with from the retail side that are like, "Hey, you got something here," and that's when I decided to put some more resources into building the mac and cheese side up.
Wow. So the expansion started with 2 stores.
Yep, 2 stores in DC,
You
and
still taking care of those 2 stores?
actually, unfortunately, one went out of business.
Oh, no.
But the former owner is a really good friend of mine, so we keep in
That's great.
touch.
So you
Yeah.
went from 1 store, then you had to build a distribution network,
Oof. Yeah. Yep.
and you had no idea how. How'd that work out?
It was a lot of no's. It was a lot of hesitation towards cold selling. At that point in
Mhm.
my life, I was still not comfortable walking into a store and asking for a manager, right? It's
Yeah,
very nerve-wracking at the time. But that's what it took. It was cold emails, cold calls, and
sure.
just walking up in the store. And it was a slow build. It was one store at a time picking you up, right? And I was still working part-time or full-time, sorry, as an engineer. So it was weekends, it was before work, it was after work. It was a lot. Um, and it got to a point where we were in 10 to 15 locations. And, that's sort of momentum that I can now go to a local distributor and say, hey, I can't do all these popping around myself. Can I work with you to actually you sell my product on my behalf? And that took about a year and a half because they wanted to see more stores and more momentum. I just kept working at it until they
And
were
you're still
like,
at this point, you're still a solo act. You're
yep,
cooking when you're not working,
yep.
and you're supplying these stores with how many units? I mean, how much of this stuff did you have to cook on a weekly basis to keep things supplied? Not to mention all the getting the ingredients, getting the packaging. I mean, there's a lot of little things involved. That sounds like
Yeah.
you were working a lot of 20-hour days.
It was complete. I mean, the fuel was all excitement, right? I mean, you're right. It was no breaks. It was, this guy who had a mission and he was just like, I'll do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, it was Restaurant Depot on the weekends, cooking on the weekends, deliveries during the week. You're talking cases loaded up my car, getting tickets for parking money, trying to unload. Like, I mean, I would take vacation days to do these things, right? Like
I
my
understand.
vacation days were not to vacation, it was to work on this thing. So
So
it
when
became
did you leave engineering? At what point that you had to do it full time?
2022. Because at this
Okay.
point we made it to Whole Foods. Um, we had made it to Target. We are now entering into the world of real CPG. And I could not no longer manage production that was occurring 5 days a week and work a full-time job. I was burning out like every week. And that's when I knew I gotta quit again and try this again.
So you started hiring people at that point to work with you?
So I had hired some part-time cooks,
Okay.
and but outside of that, no. I was still on the solo entrepreneurship route,
Wow.
still pretty much funded. We did a crowdfunding campaign twice, but no outside funding beyond that.
Good.
Still very, very lean. But that led to, okay, now we're working with 500 stores. I need more capital.
Yeah.
And that was the next chapter of raising money and all that stuff.
And where did you go for capital at that point?
Sure, anyone that would answer my phone call, it was banks, it was credit cards, angel investors. I mean, I knocked on every single door that I could, and most said no. Right? It's a
Sure.
small food entrepreneur. A lot of no's, a couple of small yeses.
Okay. And now you're in 700 stores
Yep,
and
yep.
and
So
you're
we've
doing well.
grown. Yeah, we're at year 11, and it's 11 years of lessons.
Wow.
I've learned. I feel like at this point, I know the Bible on CPG. Like I know, especially that 0 to 1 stage, I could probably answer any question you have. And it's almost scary knowledge because I don't think about it, but when I'm talking to someone, I'm like, there's a lot of stuff in this brain.
So, Miles, you touch on so many things that have fascinated me throughout my career. And I'm a little bit older than you. So that means I've suffered with Philly longer than you have. But that's okay. Back in the Richie Allen days. But it just reminded me of a story where my uncle put his fist through a clock radio when they blew it in '64. I won't get into that. So anyway, um, so what I'm thinking about as you tell me this story is your spirit to continue, despite the fact that you didn't know how you were going to navigate from one point to the other, but you saw the next point and you just said, That's what I'm going to do. And you figured that out as you went. And your comment about going out with your buds or going home to get the trademark thing is completely indicative of, I think it's not a trick our brain plays on us, it's a fact. You have a facile mind, math, science, whatever, but you have a thirst for learning, right? You want to figure things out. So, and I've written on this on some of my LinkedIn posts and talked about it because I think it affects all serious entrepreneurs. Your brain takes in 11 million bits of information per second. It's everything, everything. You're not even aware of it. You can only process 40. And the 40 that get through a funnel, which is called the reticular activation system, which is a part of your brain, the 40 that gets in that funnel are the things that you designate are most important. So when I was first starting as a young financial advisor, I put a ridiculous goal out there that I was afraid to share with people because nobody had ever done it. Or if they did, it was very few and far between. I had no idea how I was going to do it. But I wanted to be the youngest guy in the history of Merrill Lynch to hit a certain goal by a certain number of years. I missed it by a year. But the question is, had I not set that goal, where would I have ended up? And I had no idea how I was going to get there until I said, okay, if that's important to me, what do I need to be doing in the next 5 years? What do I have to do in the next 3 years, next 2 years, next month, next week? What am I doing tomorrow? And I used to put plus signs or minus signs on my calendar every day because if I wasn't gaining on the goal, it was getting away from it, I put a minus sign. And I found that the more attached I became to those plus signs, the easier it seemed to get and the more stuff I figured out.
Mm.
And it sounds like you were doing kind of the same thing. Um, Good for you, man. That's an awesome
It's
story.
it's the hunger for more attitude. And I remember in engineering too, I was always asking for more. It was I am a addict of progress.
Hmm.
I treading water to me is drowning.
Yeah.
And so even in that career, I was always trying to figure out how can I progress in what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that just translated to entrepreneurship. It's like how can I really better my approach and my how can I capture all these dreams that I have? And there's a lot of dreams, right? And I'm a sponge of excitement. I
Sure.
love driving the train forward.
So there are some very common elements here. And one of them is a thirst for learning new things that I think when you stop learning, you start dying.
Mm,
It's because you don't know what you're going to learn tomorrow or the next day. You go back, take yourself back 10 years. You couldn't have projected yourself in this realm. But I think it was that hunger to learn and get better and figure things out. I think that's one of the best parts about being above dirt on the earth. I think it's phenomenal.
yeah.
Um, I remember I've been a pilot most of my life. And when I got my initial pilot's license, this old grizzled examiner, I don't know, the guy spent more time in the air than on the ground, hands me the license. He's shaking my hand. He goes, "This is not a license to fly." And I'm like, "Well, what?" He goes, "This is a license to learn."
Mm,
And the minute you forget that is when bad stuff happens. I never, ever forgot that.
mm,
And every flight, I would sit and debrief and think to myself, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What did I learn? And it's
mm.
that pursuit that I think is common among entrepreneurs in general. One more question. What's next?
It's introducing this idea of real clean food beyond just grocery stores. So you're talking about where we travel. So our airplanes, our hotels, it's our kids in their school system, right? The school lunches. And even if we're in such unfortunate circumstance of being sick in our hospitals, right? I want to be a part of this culture of how do we better our food system, than it has been in the past 50, 70 years.
I think that's awesome. I think you're gonna figure out a way to do that, and then you're gonna be on to something else.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Myles, thank you so much for joining. It's such a pleasure to talk to, and I just love your energy, and your spirit's just phenomenal. So thank you so much
Oh,
for joining us today.
for sure. It's been a pleasure, Gary. Go Birds.
Oh, you got it, man. And Phil's. Our guest today has been Myles Powell, CEO, entrepreneur, all around creative rock star around Myles Comfort Foods. I may have to get back east just to try some of it. Myles, thanks again. I wish you best of luck.
Thanks.
It's been Gary Cinderbrand. You've been listening to If the Public Only Knew. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in to If the Public Only Knew. Don't forget to follow the show and share it with anyone who's ready for the real raw stories behind the business successes. Join Gary next time for another powerful conversation that will leave you inspired and ready to take action.